Welcome back, sci-fi fans, to another episode of the Science Fictionary Podcast. I'm Andrew, and as always, here with Marisha.
How's it going?
And returning for the first time in a long time, Daniel is back
Hooray.
to talk a little Moon Knight with us. And so,
This-
really, I mean, we're mostly wanting to talk the last two episodes because we haven't had a chance. We went on vacation during the middle of the last two episodes, so we kind of didn't get to talk about those. But Daniel, I kind of wanted to hear your thoughts on the series as a whole because we hadn't gotten to talk to you about it.
And we know you have opinions.
I enjoyed it. Like I actually think I have zero issues with this show. So there's not a lot of opinions to be had. I'm going to be kind of down the what's the word I want to use? I'm going chalk on this one, I guess. Like I don't have anything really controversial about it. I like the way the multiple personalities are portrayed. It's true to what the core of Moon Knight's character has been for several years now, at least. And I enjoy the show. Like I really don't have any real issues with it.
And what are some of your favorite things about the show?
My favorite thing about the show, period, is Oscar Isaac.
Yeah, his acting was terrific.
He plays three very distinctive characters in this show. Just the ability that man has to play these different characters really helps sell the show and sell the idea of the dissociative personality disorder. And the show would not work without his performance. That's my favorite part.
Yeah, I mean, no, he did a great job with the acting, and Marisha and I were talking about this the other night. It's it's the mannerisms. I mean, it's not just that he's changing the voice that he's doing. Like,
oh yeah, no,
it's like
their personalities completely change.
Yeah, the personality changes, the mannerisms. I mean, you can tell which character it is before he opens his mouth, usually.
Mm-hmm.
And so, no, I mean, if nothing else, I mean, I always knew he was a good actor, but like, I didn't know he was that good of an actor.
Right.
Well, whenever you get to see him giving multiple performances back to back, at the same time sharing the screen with himself, it's really even more compelling.
And just does it seamlessly.
And especially knowing, because a lot of times actors like to get like in a headspace for a character. It's not something really you can do because it's not like they filmed all of Mark's footage and then went back and filmed all of Steven's. Like he was having to, like every day when he came to work, he had to act, be a different character. And that's really impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's what I appreciate about, I mean, like you care about these, it's all one person, but you care about all these characters. Mm-hmm. You care about, or at least the two characters that we primarily see in the show. You care about these characters as if they're two different people.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like you feel like you're watching two different people.
Yeah. Which is, that's an accomplishment. There are a lot of talented actors in the world, but I don't know how many people could have pulled such very different characters off so compellingly.
Yeah. That's just the thing. I think you've got a lot that could do it, and you've had some that have done it in a less serious manner.
Mm-hmm.
But he's switching characters mid-sentence there by the last two episodes.
Right.
And so, I mean, it was really interesting. I really like, my only complaints with the show were really nitpicky. We talked about like where Khonshu has to turn the night sky back, and it's like, well, like an apple do that. Like Khonshu didn't actually have to turn the night sky back. But it is what it is. It served the purpose in the show, but it was at the same time the first thing that I think a lot of people thought was, wouldn't the tablet have done that? But you know, I think that's a nitpicky thing to complain about.
Mhm.
What about Layla? I know this is kind of I don't know anything. This is a new character, right? Like this isn't,
Well,
or she's kind of an amalgam of a couple of
right.
characters.
She's a new character, but she is based on a um based on an actual character from the series. The archaeologist that was killed when Mark was granted his powers did have a daughter, and they did have a relationship, and so that part of it's true. The name has changed.
Well, they changed
The
the
character she becomes. Well, I know we're just now talking about the last two episodes, but the character she becomes by the end of it, the Blue Scarab, is also a very, very, very obscure character from the comics, and the character Layla is based on never carried that identity. So this is something new they've given her just for the show. So it's kind of an amalgamation, but she is mostly based on an actual character.
Okay.
Who was not Egyptian originally,
No.
right?
No.
Okay.
You know, and that was like my only complaint. Like I really liked the character. Like I
Mhm.
really liked the character. And then once she becomes, you know, I don't know for sure what they're gonna call her as a superhero yet. They may go. It may be the Blue Scarab or whatever. But
I'm pretty sure it's going to be Blue Scarab. I don't know why.
I don't know why they would
Why
change
not?
it, but
Right.
you know, whatever it is. My only gripe is the when she's in the fight in the finale, and the character's like, "Are you an Egyptian superhero?" And she's like, "I am." It's like we got a little lazy with that. It's like, were we just trying to get done, or
Well,
was
I
it a
mean,
long day of shooting? And
they want to point out the inclusion of it, and I think that was kind of the point of making the character Egyptian, because Blue Scarab was an Egyptian superhero. The people who carried that mantle through the years were Egyptian. So
okay.
making Layla Egyptian just kind of brings all that, keeps that part
I'm
of the
super
character.
excited about that. She was absolutely terrific. I really felt like for a lot of the series, she was very much channeling. I'm gonna blank on the character's name from the Mummy.
From the Mummy, yeah, the archaeologist.
Yes.
What was her name?
I know the actress. Hold on a minute. What did they call her? This is so sad because people who don't know the three of us love that movie. I think me and Andrew saw it twice in the theaters when it came out. Like,
it was Evie.
Yeah, Evie. She's great.
And I really felt like for a lot of the series, like she was kind of channeling that.
She does even look a little bit like the actor with the real curly hair.
Rachel Weisz.
But I really enjoyed her performance. I know that some people didn't like that character took such a prominent role, but I enjoyed that they used this to set up more than one character.
I mean,
well, it's the
how much time do you want to spend watching Oscar Isaac have conversations with himself? Like Castaway is only so interesting.
Well, I do think at times she kind of slips more, like it's like some episodes she feels more like a background character, and some episodes she feels like a main character. It's not a consistent flow throughout as to what her role is, but I think by the end it works out fine. I agree, Alan. I think it was a good balance. I think by the end she, you know, her story, I think she has a great arc. It's simple, it's clean, and we have a new superhero, and I thought that was really good, and the actress did a fantastic job.
Yeah, she did.
I mean, really, like, I feel like the actors across the board did a really good job. Let's talk about Harrow for a minute. Because that's something we haven't actually talked about a lot, is the villain here, or I guess he's really not full on our villain. He does serve as our antagonist for the
I mean, he kind of, for most of the show, he's
serving the villain, the
big bad, but we don't see Amit until the end.
Yeah, he is Amit's avatar. That's the point.
Right.
Okay, so is he actually Amit's avatar before?
No, that's his. I don't know that I have forgotten or never quite caught on to how he was able to do what he was able to do before Amit got freed. But that was the goal he's working towards the whole time. Throughout the whole series, he's trying to serve Amit's wishes and directives and her doctrine.
I mean, I think
So,
that
for all
Kane
intents
has
and
got some
purposes,
kind of.
yeah, for all intents and purposes, I feel like, I mean, that's the way they wanted to portray it. Was even though he wasn't actually her avatar at the beginning of the show, because she hadn't been freed yet, for all intents and purposes, he was. That's the way he was acting and
Right.
being portrayed.
He kind of he had all the responsibilities of being the avatar with none of the perks. Like, he didn't have any.
Right. I mean, we see him become the full-on avatar at the end.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
The only thing is they didn't do a real good job of explaining where he's deriving the power that he has at that point.
Right.
Like, for the first 5 episodes, like where is this power coming from?
And it could have been something just as simple as it coming from his cane.
Well, obviously, I think it was coming from the staff. They just really didn't. We don't know anything about the staff. Ultimately, it's not important, but I think that they could have stood to have told us a little more about the staff.
Right.
Let's talk about this real quick. The kaiju fight in front of the pyramid. Alan doesn't seem to have enjoyed it. What did y'all think about that?
I thought it was fine. It's not it didn't make or break the show for me. I think it's a cool moment, like, to actually see these to see them fighting each other not through their avatars, actually take a physical role in what was going on. I think was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I don't know that it didn't make or break anything for me one way or the
other. What did y'all think about the look of it overall?
The look of the fight, or the look of
the look of that fight, and just the look of how the gods were presented through the whole series. With we have 3 that
I like the look. I like the look of each of the gods individually throughout the whole series. The Khonshu looked the way he did in the books. I'm not as familiar with the other 2. I'm not going to lie to you.
Well, Taweret, I actually went digging when they introduced Taweret. Who has never appeared in any Marvel comic.
She's been mentioned, though.
Okay. But she has never appeared, and I couldn't find anywhere where she was ever mentioned, but maybe she was. I mean, it's a lot of material to dig through. But it was, I think this was the benefit of having an Egyptian at the helm of this thing, was that, we're talking about, we're playing on this whole idea of rebirth and everything. And not early on in Egyptian history is Taweret. She's the goddess of childbirth, goddess of renewal. And then later period, which is still several thousand years ago, becomes associated with rebirth.
I mean, New Kingdom, but New Kingdom is still like, older than just about anything.
But I thought the brilliance in actually doing that and bringing that character in, somebody that didn't know their Egyptian gods wouldn't have really thought to do this. Somebody was on the ball with this, because she is both physically the opposite of Amit, and both in what she is,
her functionality,
her function as a god is the exact opposite. She is 100% polar opposite of Amit in virtually every way. Thank you, Nick, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah. But no, it was a really interesting contrast, I think, especially having, the goddess who eats the souls, and then the goddess who is actively involved in birth and rebirth, kind of on the opposite ends of this spectrum. It's definitely an interesting dynamic. So why did Taweret not have an avatar? Did she wasn't like imprisoned in stone or anything, right?
Taweret?
Well, no, she wasn't, because she just was like, "Hey, you want to be my avatar?" And
right. No, I mean, I guess you have to assume that the gods don't necessarily always take avatars.
Right. They don't
Like it would have to serve a purpose.
Yeah.
Right.
So, clearly she, for whatever reason, didn't have one. I kind of thought there towards the end that Layla was about to free a whole bunch of gods from stone, but maybe we'll see some more of that down the road. Because there were an awful lot of them, and presumably a lot of our bigger gods who we didn't see, with Osiris being the biggest god we saw.
Right, but we didn't see Horus, we didn't see Set, we didn't see
Right.
Amun,
No.
we didn't see Ra.
I do also think we're going to find out later in the continuity. I think Gore the God Butcher has been at him a little bit too. There may not be as many gods left in that pantheon as we assume.
Yeah, no, that's going to be interesting, and that's certainly something. I guess we can just go ahead and talk about that right now. It does kind of look like, from some of the images we've been seeing from Thor, that there's at least going to be a little bit of overlay with Wakanda, with Black Panther. And we don't know in what way. We just have that one single image, but there's a lot of speculation, because the goddess that showed the Wakandans the herb that gives them their power was an Egyptian deity. So there may be some overlay there, but I'm just curious, like, we're really fixing to go big at introducing other gods into the MCU. I mean, we've just had the Asgardians for so long. But I think we're fixing to see a lot of that. So we may get some overlay here, some overlap, and find out more about the role Gore the God Butcher maybe have played
right
here as well.
Or is going to play going forward.
Or is going to play, yeah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Let's see what else. Oh, as far as so real back to the Big Kaiju fight. I mean, I thought it was fine. I thought it looked good.
Well, and I'm not gonna lie, I watched that episode on my cell phone, so I didn't get a real good quality to see how good the CGI was anyway.
Yeah.
I think the CGI was fine. I guess what I don't know, and what they didn't tell us, we don't really know how many people are, like, who sees the gods and who doesn't, like, who can see them and who can't.
Only the avatars, right?
I don't know.
Because Harrow was kind of commenting about, oh, he must be doing this and he must be doing that. I don't miss having to see that. And so you kind of get the impression that nobody's seeing him except for Mark or Steven.
Yeah.
So I guess it stands to reason that
But
no
he can
one's
see him
seeing
at the
more than
end.
half of that fight.
Do what?
Right? So nobody could see more than half of that fight if that's the case.
But Harrow can see Khonshu in the last scene.
I guess that he's technically still the Avatar, right? Or he's at least, like, I mean, he is both Amit and Harrow at that point.
But as
and the gods can clearly see each other. So if he's like possessed by Amit, then presumably.
Well, I think the answer to Marisha's question is whatever serves the scene best at the time.
That's fair.
Yeah, I think that's probably true.
To be honest.
So let's see. I mean, as far as the ending here, I mean, there's really, I mean, we can go back and talk. I thought that the stuff in the mental hospital was all really interesting. A lot of it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. I do like that when you go back and look, that we were getting a hint from right up at the beginning of the first episode that there were 3 personalities.
Yes.
They
did a very good job of that, actually, of foreshadowing that.
Yeah. Both with reflections and then all the way up to the mental hospital, which I assume is kind of this thing that's taking place in his mind.
Yeah. He's inside of his own psyche between the worlds, between life and death, and that's where Tarwit goes and finds him, and that's all sort of him exploring his own psyche as he's dying, sort of the way it's manifesting itself is the way I interpreted it.
Yeah.
And I liked it. I thought it was really well done. It's actually taken directly from the comic books. I know I'm the only one. I always harp on that stuff just because I get a kick out of it, how well they can adapt
Well,
certain
and I want to
things.
hear that because, like, a lot of times before a show or a movie, I'll go dig and I'll learn a little bit about the characters'
Mhm.
backgrounds. On this one, because usually I know just enough that I feel like I want to flesh out what I know, but on this one, I knew nothing
Well,
except that about the dissociative identity disorder. Like, that's
right,
really the only thing I knew about
which
the
has
characters.
also been interpreted several different ways throughout the history of the comic book too.
Well,
Right.
probably as the
Well, the science on that
the
has changed
understanding the
pretty
science,
drastically.
yeah, on that. When the character was first created, I imagine that science viewed things a little differently than they do now.
Well, when he was first created, he didn't have dissociative personality anyway. That idea came along later in the books, and it's just sort of evolved. But
Okay.
the thing with the mental hospital, there is actually a scene where Mark is shot. It goes black for a second. In the very next panel, he wakes up in a mental hospital. So just that concept of it and that whole theme they went with from there on came directly from the books. That idea did, which as much stuff as they can adapt from the comics as accurately as possible, I always get a kick out of. It actually shows some care for the source material,
Right.
which you don't always get in a lot of movies and shows that are based on different sources. And Marvel does a pretty good job of doing that a lot of times. And it is just something to let the fans know, we do give a crap. We paid attention.
Right.
So
yeah, that's I think there was a lot of attention to detail, and I mean, I've heard a lot of complaints about. I mean, I think that overall, with people seem to be pretty split on this show. I'm glad I went into it really without having delved too deeply into the backstory.
and that's most people. This is not an A-list character. This is another one of those characters that people.
Well, let's be honest. Marvel hasn't done just a whole lot of A-list characters.
No, they haven't. But he's so far down the alphabet. We're just being honest about it. It has always been a cool character with a cool concept. And really, just in the last decade, it really took people like Jeff Lemire and Warren Ellis to sort of establish some aspects of this character that are mainstays, that are core to this show. It took them just in the last decade to establish some of that stuff.
Right.
So, and he was always a character that had a good fan following. He was always a cool character and a cool concept, and there were people, but he's never had a long run of his own ongoing series. He's never. It just wasn't.
He's no Spider-Man.
Right. He was never a character that when you said Marvel, Moon Knight popped in your head.
Right.
And as we get farther and farther into the MCU, we're going to get more and more of that. But so a lot of people went into the show without any, preconceived notions or knowledge. And I will admit mine on this character is limited. But even really hardcore fans of him, there's not a lot of story to be had with him over his history anyway. So it is something that they can do something, fresh and new without too many fans having too many preconceived notions about what they wanted, and just play with a really cool concept and a cool character. And I think they did a good job of that.
Now, the only thing that there was a lot of talk when this show was first announced about the character being Jewish. And, like what the implications of that were going to be. Oscar Isaac isn't actually Jewish. And so there was just a lot of conversation around. That was most of the conversation, actually, around this character when this show was first announced was that he's Jewish, his Jewishness. And like, that was just, so I was expecting that to be a lot more of a feature in the show. And they just sort of like, were like, and
we basically only get one slight indication that he's Jewish at all.
right.
Right.
And it was a good scene. It's an interesting scene.
Mm-hmm.
But I it's kind of weird because my understanding was that was a big part, that was going to play a big part in who this character was. But I think we've already seen more religion in the trailers for Miss Marvel
Mm-hmm.
than we saw in Moon Knight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it would have been an interesting dynamic, especially, lots
And
of
they may explore it more
historical,
down the road.
I mean, a Jewish man being an avatar for an Egyptian god, that's kind of fraught, right? Culturally, religiously fraught if he's a, I mean, you don't think the whole like enslaved in Egypt thing? Anyway, I just
No,
kinda
I get what you're trying to say. I don't know. I don't know that I really have a strong stance on that one way or the other. I do see your point. It's an interesting point, and I just hadn't. It never really occurred to me, to be honest.
So that was really my only thing. I was kind of like, oh, this is going to be interesting. This will be another really.
Well, it does give you
story.
something to explore down the road.
That's true.
But that's kind of the thing. Like right now, we don't know where this character goes. We know at this point, all we know for sure is that Oscar Isaac signed on to do a series, a single season. That could be it. I would really hate to see them just leave the whole thing there.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, they did enter it into the award season categories as a limited series. And
yeah, I did hear that.
The writers and showrunners said they really did create it to be able to stand on its own as one series.
I sort of agree with that perception right up until the end of the finale.
Well, it can end there.
Well, it can end there, but it basically ends where it started. Like you came full circle and you started and you realized that you haven't actually, like, the problem that was occurring was Jake Lockley all along, and he's still living the same way, except now him and Mark are on the same page. It's Steven and Mark are on the same page.
But we've seen movies end with twists like that's just the end of the movie. You know what I mean? Like, it gives you another place to go, which you obviously had anyway if you want to keep exploring the character, but you don't have to. It also gives you a really interesting place to end it.
Yeah. But I think it really boils down to this kind of really what Marvel's doing with their series is that, yes, you made one show called Moon Knight, and that's it. That was a limited series. It's not coming back, but that doesn't mean that the character is not coming back somewhere else.
Correct.
And I really think that's the thing. What do you expect, or what would you like to see them do with Moon Knight going forward? I mean, I know there's a lot of speculation about, I'm blanking, Midnight Suns and some stuff like that. And we are getting Blade, and we are getting Black Knight, and
right. And we're going to get that is true. That would be a cool place to go. I have actually given this some thought, and I don't have a good answer for it. I don't know that the character lends itself to a movie. I'm not sure how well he fits. It does seem like some of what the MCU is doing with these shows is leading to Thunderbolts. I don't know how well he lends himself to that.
Yeah. No, I think that there's kind of a third thing being set up here that really is going to have less to do with the Avengers and more to do with sort of mystical, kind of the mystical side of things. And
Right.
vampires and magic and all that kind of stuff. So I'm curious to see where they go with it. I mean, I don't even know if we have a date for the Blade movie yet.
I think so. Not that I know of.
I don't remember hearing a date. I've just heard it.
But they have
discussed.
announced a couple of characters that you kind of go, how is that character going to work with? They're obviously taking the MCU beyond the Avengers.
Right.
Which I think we kind of get. I mean, I think even, and it's not what we're talking about tonight, but Daniel, have you seen Doctor Strange yet?
I have not, but I also cannot avoid spoilers. So,
well, I'm not going to go into a spoiler. You already know the Illuminati show up.
I know the Illuminati show up.
And
I
so
know
that's
about.
that's as far as I've got to go with it. I mean,
Okay.
with the Illuminati showing up and kind of what they are in the comics, and it's basically the heads of these different team ups. So, I mean, obviously, I think they're telegraphing every way they can that we're fixing to branch as far as team ups way beyond the Avengers. We're fixing to do a lot of different groups within the MCU.
The only one that bothers me is I don't know how far they want to go with trying Inhumans again. That TV show was such a huge failure.
Yeah.
I would like to see Anson Mount back again if they decide to do that. But he's pretty busy on Strange New Worlds, which is a completely different subject for this podcast, but a show I'm really enjoying so far. So if they were to do Inhumans in some way, I would hope they could bring him back. On what else they would do. But yeah, I mean, we know we're getting some version of the Fantastic Four. We're going to get the X-Men again. They'd be crazy not to.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see where all that goes over the next few years. And I really don't know. I keep waiting. I keep expecting every movie to some way introduce at least the concept of mutants.
Right? I really thought the Multiverse of Madness was where it was at.
Well, I mean, we do get mutants exist in the multiverse.
Right, but I was expecting something a lot more concrete than that.
Right.
Or just more. I was expecting some kind of and mutants in our universe, as opposed to just having.
Yeah, our main MCU continuity has done nothing to establish that mutants exist inside of it.
Mm-mm.
And I'm going to feel cheated if their solution is, well, here's mutants, but they came from a different part of the multiverse.
Yeah, no, I really hope they don't go that way. I do think that they were pretty intentional with Wanda when they explored her backstory and pointing out that she definitely had abilities before she was experimented on.
I think that was the first step into trying to. Yeah,
I think that was our first nod that yes, mutants do exist.
Right.
We just hadn't explored it yet. So, curious to see where they go with that. But what else? Mm-hmm. What else you got?
So there was a lot of talk about Tara and just her look, her whole sort of aesthetic. A lot of people didn't love the kind of giggly cartoon hippo kind of look they went with.
I mean, she's like the wet nurse of Egyptian gods, though, right? She's bubbly. She's part of childbirth. I buy it. I love it. I love what the voice actress did. The only thing that was a little over the top, and I still laughed so hard at it, was when Layla first calls on her. Look, I'm going to agree to this thing, and she starts yelling in the temple.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people really didn't like that, but I thought the voice actress did a really good job, and as far as I could tell, she had done absolutely nothing prior to this.
That's interesting.
I think it was another Egyptian actress.
Okay, that's interesting. But I mean, it worked for me. It was a little weird, but I mean, your main protagonist has the head of a crocodile, so How normal
Yeah.
do you
And
expect
the other
it,
one's a
any of it
giant
to
bird
be?
skeleton. So
Right. Like how normal do you expect it to be? So we were kind of talking in the chat a little bit about the scale of the fight at the end. Was Khonshu always that big, or does he like change
They're
size
gods.
depending
yeah,
on?
no,
Like
he changes sizes.
yeah,
They
Okay,
I
all
so
think
they're
it
all
actually literally kind of shows him scale up, but we also see her scale up as she's consuming souls.
okay, you're right. All right, that makes sense.
So I think it's that they're gods. It's like, is that how
Is that
physical is what you're seeing actually?
right?
Anyway,
Yeah.
like, so I don't know. I find it all really interesting. I hope we're going to learn more. If there's one thing that I can pull from here that I hope we learn more about, if we don't do any more Moon Knight, is I want to learn more about the Overvoid. Which we got name dropped in this. It's this place where the other gods have retreated to the opulence of the Overvoid, and I know what we're seeing in Thor is Olympus, but is that part of the Overvoid?
Yeah, that's interesting. I had one other thing, like story wise.
Okay.
So, all right. So, Khonshu's avatar is all kind of resilient, but Harrow straight up it goes in there and kills off all the avatars. Where's their super cool armor? How come none of them like have superpowers?
I think Harrow tells you when he walks in there, it's, these gods serve a lot of different
right.
purposes. And the first thing he says is, you're judges, not warriors.
Exactly. And the thing, I mean, they tell Khonshu and Mark during the first time we meet them that they are supposed to be observing through their avatars, are not supposed to be taking active roles. They haven't granted their avatars any of these armors or weapons or abilities the way Khonshu has, because Khonshu's actually breaking the rules by doing that.
Right.
Interesting. Okay. That's an interesting that makes more sense, because I'm like walking and was like, okay, so Mark's, like Khonshu's avatar's got all the powers, and then Twilight has all the powers, but why does no one else have powers? So that's a good, me, I like in universe explanations for things. It can't just be like because they needed to die. No, we gotta have an answer.
Because it serves the story.
Yeah. Oh, come on, Daniel.
Ro forgot it was Wednesday.
It was.
Well, I don't know how much longer we're going to be going, Ro, but we're kind of wrapping up. But
we're glad you're here.
Yeah, definitely glad you're here. So, shoot, I kind of lost track of where I was going to go. So let's just talk about kind of the end of the way it ended. At least the way it ended before the cutscene. The cutscene just kind of resets that we're still dealing with the same old problems, which is just this ongoing thing that Mark has to deal with. It's who he is. That he, it's not something he can escape. But the ending, I just want to talk about Harrow show, or the Jake Lockley reveal is really what I want to talk about.
Yeah.
What y'all think? I mean, we kind of knew, a lot of people were determined that Jake Lockley would not appear in the series, and that the indication of a third personality was just representative of Khonshu. But I think they telegraphed pretty clearly the whole way that there was a third personality. But what did y'all think about the Jake Lockley reveal?
I liked it. I did. Well, I mean, we already knew, like, by the time we got to that point, I knew Jake was coming. Especially whenever, like you said, I mean, you could pick up on the clues the whole way. There's that personality's there. And then during the fight, whenever Steven switches, and then you see a little quick whatever and Mark switches, and Mark's looking around. He asked Steve, and he said, "Was this you?" And he said, "Absolutely not." Then you knew, yeah, Jake is actively taking over, and they just don't realize it. So you knew he was coming. If you had any knowledge that Jake Lockley was a character at all, then you knew he was coming. So whenever the dude took the wheelchair, I got excited. I got pumped up because you just know. So then whenever you get there and Khonshu's like, Mark has no idea how sick he really is. Meet my friend Jake, and you're like, fucking go, because you're at a point in the episode where you realize Mark and Steven are going to be fully aware of each other's consciousness all the time, and they can coexist. And all the issues you saw Steven have to have in his personal life again in the show, like, they don't have to do that anymore. Like, they can actually go on with their lives and have everything be fairly normal, except for the fact you knew Jake was in there. So it just kind of flips it on its head, and I thought it was a really good way to end the show.
Yeah,
it sets up really interesting things if you decide to go forward, and if you don't go forward with the character, which I think they will in some way. Let's be honest. But even if you didn't, that's a great like twist to end the show on, and just give one of those last little mind-bending things to the audience to sit there and leave them wondering, what happens to this character now? You know, like a lot of great movies and TV shows have done in the past. So I enjoyed that ending.
You know, it's one of those things. I mean, Khonshu's not wrong. Like, Hera's from a bigger perspective, other than the fact that Mark is tired of killing people, like, Hera's got to go. He's got the essence of this demon basically in him, like, you know, especially with all the people that Mark knows he's killed in the interest of justice over the years. Like, this guy kind of tops the list. But then whenever they're walking out of the hospital and you see all of these orderlies and nurses dead, I think that's the point where you realize it's not, this is a completely different ball game. Like,
right.
Mark killed people, but he felt like he had he had a line. I don't feel like Jake Lockley has a line.
Right.
Yeah. No, Jake Lockley definitely
Mark did it from the aspect of being some form of soldier most of his life. Right. And doing what he had to do in that aspect. But you had this sort of conflict throughout the whole show, of that Khonshu's not good either. Right?
No, Khonshu is actually a really, the more I sit here and think about it, Khonshu is a really interesting character.
Yeah, I mean, just because he has a different point of view than this other god who goes a little more extreme doesn't make Khonshu right either. Khonshu's perfectly happy to manipulate the Jake personality into killing whoever just happens to be in the way of achieving Khonshu's goal for what he might think is the greater good. But he ain't good, and that's part of the conflict of the show. Is Mark knows Khonshu's almost just as bad, and he saved his life, and he's indebted to him, and he has to do these things to us. But he's also trying to get out from underneath his control the entire show. You know, Khonshu's he ain't good neither.
No, we get this really interesting back and forth of like exactly. We never get a very clear picture of what Khonshu really is all about.
No, we don't.
You know, on one hand, he's this, like, you know, the protector of the travelers of the night. That's kind of the whole thing. But like, what does that entail exactly? How bad do you have to actually be on Khonshu's bad side?
Right. But the thing is, but his deal is evil for the greater good, the way he perceives it. Whereas one character is about dispensing justice before anybody's ever done wrong, Khonshu's about punishing the guilty. The problem is he'll punish. He's willing to do whatever to punish what he judges to be guilty.
I mean, we'll go
And
in and we'll kill a half a dozen people to get to the guilty guy.
right,
You know, that's and
Well, yeah.
it's also really interesting because they kept telling Steven, you know, you're out of balance, right? That was kind of like the line that they kept coming back to. And Alan mentioned that this show really does deal a lot with balance. And so you were kind of led to believe that it was Steven and Mark that were the thing that was out of balance, but you realize that Mark's actually the one in the middle. Steven is your innocence and Jake is your evil persona, basically. And Mark is just kind of the guy in the middle. He'll do the bad things, but for the right reasons. So,
it's an interesting way to look at it.
you know, because like Mark he doesn't just kill people to do it, right? He only does it with.
He does have a moral code, like I said. He's been some form of a soldier his entire adult life. Like that's just the way he. That's what he is. That's who he is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like Lockley's got a code. You know, you don't kill that many people to get to somebody if you've got.
Yeah. Well, you look at. I mean, at this point, I think we have to assume if Steven was the personality that was created to be fully detached from the terrible situation, that it's likely that Jake is the one that took the brunt of the
all the horrible things.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. So what things does Mark not remember?
Right.
Right? Like he's blocked off all these things for Steven to not remember. Like, so what things happen that Mark doesn't even remember?
Yeah. And it's possible that's not where it is. It's possible that, you know, kind of the way this works, the way they're going with this, with the identity disorder in this series is that these, and I think actually to some extent the way it actually works is usually these personalities are created out of a need.
Mm-hmm.
So is it something is it a personality that was created while he was a soldier?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That'd be interesting too.
So I'm curious to see. I want to see if we do more. I like the character. I know we're going to see more of Layla. I don't know where she's going to show up, but we're definitely seeing more of that character. Mm-hmm. They didn't set that character up in the finale for nothing,
right? To just be there just for that moment.
But anybody have anything else before we wrap up, or anybody that still, I see we do still have a few people lurking in the chat. If you have any thoughts, please share them before we wrap up.
Questions, comments, resolutions,
snide remarks.
Yeah, that seems more likely.
Joker Voice isn't here for the snide remarks tonight.
It's true. Alas.
He'll Joker Voice, I expect your snide remarks in the comments later.
Right.
Perfect. But no, I really enjoyed the show. I thought it was a really interesting. It was really different. And that's, you know.
Well, that's what everybody's been clamoring for, is something different. And I felt like this did a lot of things different.
It really did. Which I think is a good thing because it will continue to keep the MCU stories. You know, there's always kind of a tendency when you tell too many of the same kind of stories to kind of start falling in a rut. And I think that as long as they can continue to tell really different stories, I think that was going to help that issue.
Yeah. Daniel, any more thoughts before we wrap up?
Just always follow Ethan Hawke. He never picks a bad script, a bad show, a bad movie. It seems like he's always in something good.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
That is actually one of my rules of thumbs. If Ethan Hawke's in it, I'll watch it because he usually picks something good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
And he's a good actor. I mean, as far as the TV series, Marvel TV series, I mean, this is one of the best acting we've seen yet.
Yeah, it was really excellent.
Yeah. I mean, if nothing else, the acting was absolutely top notch.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll be interested to see if this, and like you said, I really appreciate a story that's not a total cliffhanger, like like WandaVision, for example. Mom at the end. It was like, and obviously it's not. It's going somewhere. Like I feel like you could leave this story and you could be like the end, and do something. Like I hope we get to see more of it, but I also appreciate the merit of a story that doesn't feel like it has to be a cliffhanger.
Right.
That can kind of finish it up and leave it ambiguous or interesting of an ending, but that you're not like, well, clearly the next thing that comes out is going to be deal with this story.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what I thought. What about you? You wanted our thoughts. What's your
I think I've given all my thoughts. I really enjoyed the show. I want to see more stuff like this. I like this. I like this. I said his name and he appeared. It's magic.
Must be Beetlejuice. Are you sure your Joker voice and not Beetlejuice?
But yeah, I mean, we may never see this character again. And as Daniel said, that's a fine place to leave the character. So
I mean, Oscar Isaac's a pretty busy guy. I think we're a lot more likely to see more of Layla than we are of Oscar Isaac, just because.
Well, I mean, Oscar Isaac's fixing to be. It's not going to be too long. They're going to be gearing up. Although he won't be in. Never mind. He's dead. He won't be in Dune anymore.
It's true.
Right.
Unless he's
I was wondering where you were going with that.
Well, yeah, I was like, we're getting ready to shoot Dune. I was like, no, he's dead. Sorry, spoilers.
That's like, in case you hadn't read the book that's been out for 50 years. Spoiler alert.
All right, guys. Well, I guess we're going to wrap up there. Thank you to Ro, Alan, Joker Voice, and Nick for joining us in the chat tonight. And until next time, Daniel, let people know where they can find you online.
I am Dan C. Peeps on Twitter, and if you're lucky, you'll see me post something about once every 6 months. So.
That's about.
I'm just not very active.
All right, Marisha, you're going to have to get more active because you're fixing to start, at least on your Instagram, because you're about to start making cosplays for Dragon Con this fall.
It's true.
So.
Like I've got like pages of concepts for all of the transforming costumes that the minions demand for Dragon Con. So we'll see how many of the minions get what they want. But I am princesses _and_ Padawans on Twitter. No, Instagram. Yes, not Twitter.
All right. You can find me running the Twitter account for this show at Sci_Fictionary. No, that's not right.
We're not very with it tonight, love.
No, that was right.
It is Sci_Fictionary.
That is right. Sci_Fictionary. I forgot which podcast I was on for a minute there. At Sci_Fictionary on Twitter. You can drop us a line at thesciencefictionary@gmail.com. You can catch the Science Fictionary podcast and Coruscant Radio Underground anywhere that you listen to podcasts. And I think that does it. Check out no new episode of the Science Fictionary this week, but we did at the end of last week dropped our 100th episode. So please go check that out. All right. Yeah. So until next time, may the force be with you.
This podcast is part of the Red 5 Network. For more Red 5 Network podcasts, visit red5network.com.